Hello and welcome back to the channel. We are the Movie Marathon Men and we watch films that make us go, This is an episode of Saga Wars where we watch every film in a saga and tell you which ones are and aren't worth watching. Today, it's Terminator 2.
So, let's talk about the Terminator 2 Judgment Day first impressions. What do you think? Firstly, actually, we should say, before we talk about it, hold that thought. The Terminator, 1984, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, 1991.
Yep.
It's quite a jump.
It's quite a jump. Not as big as the jumps they make.
No, but it's interesting. You know, with some films, it feels like it works and they're going to rush out a sequel.
Yes.
Or, you know, a film gets made and there was plans for sequels. It feels with this one that they waited until it was right. James Cameron went away and made two different films.
Yes.
He made Aliens and I think The Abyss as well.
Yeah, I can't remember when that came out exactly.
So it feels like this was just at the right time to be made for him, which leads into our opening impressions, I would think, because this film is incredible.
I thought it was really good, and I'm going to sound so pessimistic. Not pessimistic. Accurate. I'm going to sound like a Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
I really, really liked it, but I obviously liked it less than you, and that I can tell means I'm going to play a sort of not devil's advocate, just my advocate.
Hiss.
I'm not advocating. I'm advocating for me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be more negative, I think, here. But I want to say before I do all that, I really enjoyed this. It was a great film.
Yeah.
It was an incredible follow-up. I did love the film.
Yeah.
Not as much as the first one.
Really?
Like it's for me, it's a layer removed. In like, if I don't know what the film categories are.
Yeah.
Not in like out of 10 or anything. Just like if T1 sits in this sort of area with other incredible films, it's in that one below. Like on a tier list.
That is interesting.
It's an A, whereas Terminator 1's an S.
That's interesting. The channel's already fallen apart. We've found it. It's happened. No, for me, I've said that the opening, just straight away, I think the opening is incredible. It retains the same style of like robots and ships and stuff like that. Like, it's definitely the same universe, which sometimes sequels inexplicably forget the film before and look completely different.
I can't imagine we're going to come into that at any point in this video.
And it's like, okay, but you were allowed to watch the films before. Like, it's not, do a maths test, but you're not allowed a calculator. It's like, you are allowed a calculator because you will be using one in the outside world. I hate maths. For me, this film, I think, is brilliant. I think, so the teleport scene is the same, but better. And for me, personally, that theme carries on throughout the film. So I think...
The whole film's better. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just everything that happened in the first film that I liked, they did again, but better. But in a different way. And they flipped things on its head, I think is really exciting.
So my in a general sense, I thought the first half was just as good as T1 to me. It was great.
Yep.
I loved it. I just felt that it didn't run out of steam. It just did a different thing, I suppose, in the second half. It didn't have the same sort of nervousness, the same anxiousness, sort of propelling the plot forwards. As the first one had. You were still excited, but I think it leans. Obviously, it does. It leans so much more into the action. Say it's similar to Alien and Aliens, where in Alien it's tense. It's sort of there's one alien, it could be around the corner. Whereas Aliens, it's like there's 500 of them, and we're gonna blast them. And it's a lot more actiony, and it's just a different style of film. And it was still done very, very well, but I think it just sort of didn't carry the same freneticness, the same sort of like the tightness. It wasn't as lean. It was flabby. It was
there's loads of different stuff.
And what I need to say actually before I'm saying it's flabby, I watched an extended cut.
Yes. We need to say that you watched the super duper extended cut.
So my film, I don't know how long yours was. Mine was 2 hours and 47 minutes.
I think mine was 2 hours.
Yeah,
I think all the flab was added back into yours. So
I had a lot of scenes where there was one scene in particular with I don't want to spoil it. I don't think a Hoover. It's that character who was introduced, I think, in the third act to set up the third act. He's in the film earlier, and you just see scenes with his family. And it's like he's balancing his work life.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
You see his kids, and he's like, "Oh, come with me to the water park. We need, like, you promised me we'd have a day with the kids."
No,
at the
absolutely.
He's like, "Oh, I've just got to finish this coding. I'm just on the edge."
Right.
It's like we had scenes like that, and there was a lot more scenes with Arnie and Child.
Yeah.
It's. I don't think it didn't feel like that part was the added scenes were bad. They slowed it down, and maybe if I watched the non-extended edition, it would have sped up. But even then, I think it didn't feel the same urgency. There was a lot more plotting going on. The characters knew more about the world. So I
think that's because you watched 40 more minutes of plot. I think that's because everything that you've said that wasn't good is stuff that was added in.
Maybe, but I think it's the characters knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So they were planning, they were making plots, they were planning, they were doing stuff. Whereas in Terminator 1, they were just sort of fighting for their lives. They were just...
Each scene. Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas...
It's just, hope we survive this scene.
Exactly. And I will say that for me, the rest of the Terminators suffer from the more world building there is, the less excited I am for them to tell me more. If that makes sense. Like, and this one doesn't do a lot of it, doesn't like expand a huge amount, but just it adds a little bit more each time. And it makes it a little bit less exciting. So you in the first one, you just see glimpses of a horrible future and people are dead, and you see what's at stake. And in this one, I think you just get a little bit more. Maybe I only got this. I got a little bit more of like, here's what John Connor looks like. Here's like a little bit and piece.
Yeah. No, I think your version was a terrible version to watch.
There's a point where it says casualties 0.0. What's the point?
I really
How are you part dead?
I really enjoyed that. I'm wondering if that's like a sort of like he's taken off a limb. Technically, that arm is now dead.
The arm's dead, but would you describe... I thought you can't be partially... Because you'd look at someone and they'd be a little bit of like old age death.
Yeah.
Like if it was to that extreme, like they're either dead or they're not dead.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you look at someone and just your presence scares them a bit and their heart goes a bit fluttery.
Yeah.
Have you done 0.001% of a casualty?
No.
You've sped up their death a bit.
No, I think it's like if he's taken off an arm. Yeah, I don't think it's whether they've scared them slightly enough and they're closer to death because their heart rate is raised. But again, loads of really fun details like that are in this film. And this happens in the first film, but in this film as well, every new scene, a new capability is displayed by the Terminators. And what in the first film wasn't as clear, so a readout from a robot looking at things. Yeah. So you were able to see that it said casualties 0.0. Where in the first one we saw, there's a sort of robotic readout, but you couldn't actually see what anything said. So you see things like that a bit more clearly, which I enjoyed.
Yes. No, I enjoyed that. I think it was way better than what the Terminators can and can't do.
Yeah.
I suppose the first one didn't need that as much. It just felt like some otherworldly force.
Yeah.
This film needed it because of the setup, the whole point of the film.
Just in general, though, the film, absolutely beautiful, I thought.
Yes.
James Cameron, brilliant action director, but just normally, like, the film looks great. Yeah. And you just get that from the beginning. Like,
it's an incredible
just the film
step
starts
up,
and you're just looking at it and you're like, wow, this looks great. Yeah. So and that carries through the film. You just really enjoy it.
It's one of those cases where you feel the budget increase. Like this was incredible. The visuals for 1991. Of course, I was watching the Redux version, so maybe it was 2018.
Yeah,
but the visuals were incredible. And I also thought it felt more like an 80s film.
Yes,
I felt like this felt more like an 80s film than the film in the 80s. It hadn't. It's not like it was super cheesy, but it had that heartwarming, like sort of all American somehow feel to it that 80s films have. Even though it was in the 90s.
But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It still has that 80s cheese. Like there's a bit with a needle drop, which is just absolutely perfect and one of my favourite in any film ever. I suppose it is only 91. Yeah. And it's from James Cameron, who's a very 80s kind of director, who's still been very popular since. Yeah. But if a director comes up in a certain school, it makes sense that they'll then carry that ethos throughout the rest of their work. If they're a 70s director, it makes sense that the movies that they're making now are more 70s in their sensibility. Yes. So it makes sense that in 1991 he made an 80s movie. Yes. But yeah, I think it's great fun, really exciting. I love from a very early point in the film, I was happy that it existed, which you don't always feel with a sequel.
Yes. No, absolutely. Obviously, we'll get onto it. Actually, we may as well get onto it in the story.
Let's go on. Let's go on to our ratings. So, story. What have you said? I'm curious.
So I've given it a 7, and I'm just going to quickly read my notes. I'm measuring my notes there in a sec.
That's harsh. I feel a 7.
I rated that a lot on the pacing, to be fair.
Right.
So I might rate it.
Yeah, I think because you watched a terrible version of the film, so
I'm still going to keep it lower. I'm still going to keep it. And I know that I still think even if you cut out the excess, it doesn't have the same like power as the first one did. Like I think you didn't know what was going to happen, but you were sort of anticipating a big climax in a way that sort of didn't like make me anticipate the film in the same way. I don't know. I loved the opening. That's the thing I will say. This film was one of the best examples of putting characters somewhere 10 years later and it being where you expect them to be. I think Sarah Connor in this film, it felt like what Rian Johnson was trying to do in The Last Jedi. This is a sort of example of putting someone. I mean, not that you should have done that with Luke Skywalker. Or if you did, you had to give a better reason for it to happen. But they didn't just make Sarah Connor more wise or like a bit more badass or whatever. Like they put her in a place that was realistic for a reason that served the story. And I thought it was great. The setup of what's going to happen is done like succinctly and
the exposition is given quickly.
It holds off
adeptly.
The reveals are held off for just long enough, and then but not too long.
Yeah,
all that stuff. But like all that stuff's in the first half, and then I feel like the second half was just action. Which is fine. Yeah. But that to me just had to lose a couple of story points.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what we're going to try and do on the channel is talk more about premise than plot. Yes. And I've said that, I think that premise is the first half of the movie and plot is the second. I feel like, again, so because this is a follow-up, you've got the world, you know it enough. So the premise you've half been given. So this then has to introduce its new premise of why it exists, what's new about this one, what's different about this one. I feel like the story is flipped on its head in a really fun and exciting way. It makes sense following on from where we are. And then the plot I enjoy as well. Like, so when the pieces are all in place, I then enjoy what happens. I enjoy where they go, what happens, what they do. I think all the action set pieces are great. So I've given the story a 10.
Which is fine.
I will stand by that. I'm unwavered by your 7.
Which
completely.
Is fine. I'm giving it an 8 in retrospect because I realised that I watched it. I didn't realise that when I rated this, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought that was just the film. But I liked it. An 8 is still a thoroughly enjoyed. Because it's just not a perfect story.
But for your version of the film, the bits that held it back, the bad pacing. For me, the moments that were still in were the like calm before the storm, the moments of respite, but there's still a tension in them because you know that you've just come from that action scene and anything can happen in this moment where they're just chilling out with someone. But they're never really chilling out, but they're like in a place where they're waiting for something.
They're not chilling out.
They're like refueling or something.
Yeah, but I think also without the exact plot point, they change focus at about the halfway point.
Yes.
From not like who's the villain, but what they're going to do about it.
Yeah.
And that, it didn't kill the momentum for me, but it definitely like slowed it. I was like, the opening, the premise, the setup, I was excited. Yeah. And then it slowed down for a bit, and then they went, and now here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then because they laid it out as a plan, I was just waiting for it to happen. I know that it was going to fail, it was going to but it made it just less exciting, the end. Yeah. Even it was still fun, it was just less like thrilling.
So the first one really is a chase.
Yes.
It's a game of cat and mouse.
Yes.
This one has that to an extent, but is also doing other stuff. But I still really enjoyed it.
As did I. As is an 8.
That's good, and I'm glad that I've managed to talk you up on a point again.
Because it. I don't imagine the reverse is going to happen.
No.
Character, I've realised I've not given a score.
Right, which
means this is 0.
Yeah. Try putting a 1 in front of that, and you've matched mine. I've given it a 10. I think that the characters are brilliant, as we've said. So in talking about the story just there, I've been really keen to talk about character, and I've been trying to hold back and separate them. But they go hand in hand very often. Sometimes you can separate them. But in this, the story is driven by character decisions, all of which I feel make exact sense. In the world, the way that characters are treated by other characters makes perfect sense. So one character is regarded by medical professionals and police officers in the exact way that they would, in a way that makes complete sense. So you're not watching it and frustrated, being like, "Oh, but why are they doing that? That makes no sense." Like, "Oh, that's just lazy writing." They're doing.
You were watching me watch the film,
but they're written into a corner in good ways because characters make decisions that make sense. And as we're saying, of characters that are progressed from a point, they're exactly where you want them to be. They're developed. I think Linda Hamilton is incredible. She's got nuance, drama, depth. She's brilliant, and it's so fun to see her come from what she was in the original film, which is a good character and she is a good performance, to then how it's changed for this film is so fun, and it shows her range as well. But it's not like, oh, I'm showing my range by just playing a completely different character. I'm playing a character that's been changed by this world, and you see what has driven me here. So I absolutely love the character. There's a kid in this film. Kids are either incredible or terrible. This one for me is incredible. I think he's great. He does exactly what needs to be done for the film. He's kiddie in the points that he needs to be kiddie, and not in the points where he needs to not be. So like, there's one point in the film where he's running from someone and the person chasing him is walking. And stuff like that, of like, you see in some films where like a child is running like a derpy child, and a full athletic adult is chasing them and not catching up. So bits like that where you have to really suspend your disbelief don't happen in this film. I think the kid is great. I think Linda Hamilton's great. Arnie's brilliant in this film. Robert Patrick is incredible. His performance is amazing. His character is so fun as well. It's a new kind of character for this universe, but fits within it really, really well. So that for me is 10.
See, so from my point of view, Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor, forgot the guy's name, Thomas Patrick, someone.
You've made me forget it. I just said
that, isn't it?
I just said it.
Francis
Robert Patrick. It's Robert Patrick because you said something so close to it. I was like,
Patrick Thomas.
Robert Patrick.
He's a master of disguise, though. That's the thing.
We'll edit this bit out.
Robert Patrick. Bob. Is great. That was what I was going to say. He's great. He's intimidating. It's intimidating in a different way to Arnie because he sort of feels like a real police officer. Like, he has a visual of a real sort of person. Who just is creepy and sinister. The two that, for me, peak and trough are Arnie and John Connor, in that some scenes as you were, incredible. Some scenes, I'll go with Arnie first. His expanded dialogue portions are for me were a little bit flat, and I know they're flat because it's a machine. I'm not saying that he's delivering the lines badly, but it was a little bit like the exposition in the first one given by Carl Reese, where he's sort of shouting it and screaming it, and he's like frantically giving information
because they're in a car chase right now.
And then in this one where it was like a child asking Arnie, and he was just kind of speaking in a weird voice,
very relaying facts.
It was like Arnie who speaks in a blank voice, and like sort of a blank voice, a weird sort of tone of his voice. It's like he was trying to dull his weird dull voice down further, and he didn't need to, and he doesn't do it again. In the rest of these, as I will say, he has a better flat tone.
It's really interesting because I have written in my notes
that this is the best.
Given the right script and character, Arnie is an incredible actor.
And I don't think he's bad.
Because I think he's great in this. I think he's brilliant.
I think it's so some scenes, and not the extended ones. Some scenes he's just. I keep
forgetting that you've watched an extended version because I think again you might be talking about scenes with him and the kids.
It is like they are the main scenes.
He probably got less attention span for them because you've watched a bunch of other superfluous scenes.
But he just it's just something in his delivery just doesn't land in. I neither take it as comic relief or believable robot or sinister, or I just sort of see. I almost see Arnold Schwarzenegger saying a line as
yeah.
flatly as he can. Whereas in the other ones, I see it a lot more as either comic relief or a sinister robot or he's been told. And the kid was incredible at times, and I'm going to sound this... I mean this in just a part, just hints, a sort of sprinkling of seasoning.
Yeah.
Of Anakin in episode 1. Hints. Just the way the lines were given, it's a bit more like a... So what are you gonna do? And it was like sort of...
Yeah, that's...
Had a little bit of a... Not a whine, a little bit of like a...
I mean, he is 10.
He's 10. Yeah, he was 10. The actor was 13.
Yeah.
He's obviously... like, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it kind of just didn't.
Yeah.
And I think when those two would pair up, certain scenes did not land.
Saw.
When it was a kid, like, so the one where they're talking about what you should, like, not nicknames, like slang.
Yes.
Works fine. Happy.
Yeah.
Incredible.
All right, good.
Those bits are absolutely fine.
I thought you were going to talk about that, and I was like, no, that's the bit that works.
Exactly, yeah, that bit works. And there's other bits where maybe they're talking about, like, the Cyberdyne and Skynet, and it's very technical, and Arnie's trying to say something, and I don't know, I can't remember anything the kid says in response to this, but he's very much like, but why would the computers want to kill people?
Yeah.
Don't they know that we're just all good guys? Or something? Like, he says nothing like that, but he just says it in a way that I know this is a child. Yeah. And it's like cut the tension a bit. It's not in the first one where Carr or other ones even where characters like, you're all gonna die, this is the end of the world. Yeah. And then Sarah Connor either says something or she like looks pensive or whatever. You just got a kid kind of like being a bit zany.
Well, it's like the kid thing of like they ask a question, they go why,
yeah,
and then the answer and they go why,
exactly,
and they answer and they go why.
And on balance in the film, he was endearing to me. I thought at times he was a bit Anakin, at times he was the heart of the film, and it fluctuated scene to scene. But by the end of it, and he solves a problem at the end that was very much like Anakin Skywalker. I don't want to say what it is exactly. I know they teased it earlier in the film. I know it was. But
like, they didn't even tease it. Like they set it up fully.
They set it up, but it still was very. It's the same as you can say they set up that Anakin's a good pilot, and then he.
No. But they didn't. Like it's completely different. It's completely different because we're told about how his mum has trained him as this kid. So that's why like, he's a kid savant. Like that's why he's because for the 10 years that we haven't seen this kid. He's been constantly learning. Oh,
I know, but it's still... I just don't like it.
Yeah.
Like it's
that's fair.
Again, without the exact plot points.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it's like... Everyone, like the other actors are all like super tense. Like people are dying and it's a horror. And then you cut to it and he's like...
Yeah, he's a bit... Oh
no, I'll just reroute I'll just press the doodly doodly.
Yeah.
And it's like that bit in episode 1 where... I mean, in that one, it doesn't matter because everything else sucks. But you're cutting to it and it's going, hey, I'll do a flip or whatever.
Yeah, I'll try spinning. That's a good trick.
And it's that same... It's not... It's what I'm saying. It's hints.
Yes.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit like if he was cowering under a table and scared, and maybe he helps out and he's brave, and that's the thing that does it. It's
that he is brave.
It's that he's brave, not that he's like in the corner just kind of quipping.
Yeah. I suppose, does that come from naivety though?
Maybe. It's
like, valid would a kid be naive and like actually not taking it that seriously because they're a silly little child?
Oh yeah, no, this is it. And this is why on balance it works. It just... I would rather it was not a kid. I just think it was. So I don't know what I'm going to give it. I'm still going to give it an 8. Yeah. I'm still going to give it good. Yeah. It gets marked down for Arnie being a bit too robotic, which seems like a ridiculous criticism given he's a robot.
And the child being a child.
And the child being a bit too much like a child. They're the points. And you might say that's what they're supposed to be. And I would say, well, write it differently.
Yeah.
Or don't, because everyone else liked it.
Yeah.
But write it differently from me, as we've established, the People's Reviewer.
On to production.
So I'll go straight off. This is a 10 out of 10. Just
Same.
To put it at the front. This is 10 out of 10. There's nothing wrong with it.
The effects are incredible and still stand up.
Yep.
And then also the shots that aren't effects, like we were talking about earlier, are just incredibly beautiful. The light in this film is beautiful. And that is what is lacking in some action films, including in this series, as we'll talk about later. But no, the film looks incredible. Some of the most iconic action scenes of all time that are still referenced. Like this, again, you know, the The first film is one of the most important sci-fi movies of all time. This is one of the most important action movies of all time. It's referenced again and again. It's held up as a masterclass. The costuming, again, great. The music is the same kind of music that's back, and it's brilliant again. So yeah, just across the board, it looks brilliant.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this film does sort of live and die on its effects because of the nature of the villain. I suppose the characters live and die on the effects as well.
They do.
Because of the nature of the villain.
Because of the nature of the, yeah.
But, and they're incredible. They're so good. You can't say it another way. It is liquid, and it's believable, and it feels tangible. And it doesn't get better. As we've seen in the other Terminator films, they don't get better. Not like this is the best. They just meet it. Yeah, if they do, because all of the effects are used sparingly. Yeah, and it's like we've said of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Yes. And I think they learnt that lesson for this film. Yeah. So whereas for me Terminator was an 8 on production because some of the effects let it down, this is a 10. And I don't think many films will be a 10 on production for me. I'm thinking of notes that I've written for other films that I might now mark down because I think they should be held up as the gold standard for production because it is incredible. Let's go on to rewatch. For me, this is a 10. It's so fun. It's so cool. I think there's loads to enjoy. I can see you sort of smiling. I'm worried about what you've suggested. For me, it's even better than the original. I also think that what's important is that you wouldn't have to have watched the original. No, you could watch this as your Yeah, but you could watch this without having watched the original. The same is true for the original and this one, though. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, but because at a certain point in existence, the first film had come out and the second one hadn't.
And no one in the cinema in the first film was saying, what happens next? But I can't understand this film without seeing the sequel.
No, that's not usually how stories work. And that's why we started the video at the beginning rather than right now.
I'm only just getting started.
But yeah, no, I think it's really, really fun. There's loads to love. And lots to pick up on a rewatch. There's loads of little details that are really, really fun.
Yeah. So what I'm going to say is mine is a 9.
Yeah.
The reason I laughed is because I wrote, so I gave it a 7, and the first point is loses 2 points for how long it is. So I immediately have to give it back those 2 points.
Yeah.
I still dock it 1 point for not being as urgent as 1. The film. I know the deleted scenes, but even then, I'm sticking by it. If I watch it doesn't have.
And you're right because there are loads of scenes where they're not running for their lives.
Yes, and that's all I want from every film, is people running for their lives. So it just loses 1 point for that, and then you said 9 out of 10, which is still like up there as one of the most rewatchable films. Yeah, especially when it's 47 minutes shorter. Yeah. So yeah, it's rewatchable.
The M factor, that's on the next piece of paper for me. Yeah, I think this is also important to say. Yeah, is the films that we made more notes about, or the films that we made less notes about. It says something about the film. This film, when I was watching it, I was so excited the whole way through that I was constantly writing things down. Yes, and I felt that I could do that because I had seen it before, so I wasn't, detracting from my own experience of the film. Yes. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this. I've got 3 pages of notes about it, which I think sings its praises. So the M factor, our final criteria on the rating, what do you think that I've given it?
It makes you warm and fuzzy.
It does actually, yeah, because the original isn't like a warm and fuzzy. But this is a 10 for me on M factor. I loved it.
Mine's very hard. It's like a 9. Like out of like it doesn't lack in much. It doesn't have the most personality I've ever seen out of the film, but it has huge personality. Yeah, this is it's way up there.
It's always doing something or multiple things. So right.
And it's particular. Like there's a tone to this film and the first film that is not necessarily unique to the Terminator, but it's close to unique to the Terminator. It's a Terminator film and it feels it, and that's what gives it the M factor. You could tell the exact same story, and they have. without the M factor.
Yep.
And you can see exactly what that looks like. You can see the exact same plot without just that tone, that urgency.
Let's ask if it's a watch or not. I think you can tell what both of us are going to say. For me, it's a must watch.
It's a must watch.
Yeah,
it is
definitely.
It's
It's such a great film.
You could tell that even
the
just
thing
watching
is,
it without the sequels, it's going to be a must watch. They're not going to ignore it in the sequels as well, and it's a must watch just for entertainment value.
Yeah. Like this film puts its mark on every other subsequent film.
Yes. Not even in the Terminator franchise, just in every film.
Yeah. No, but it genuinely does. Let's go over to some trivia with Mr. Trivia. But there's a bit of trivia that I know that I don't know if you have. But this film has such a wide influence that it's even bled into video games. So there's a whole level on GTA, that on Grand Theft Auto, that is a car chase in this, a bit down by the river, where the... so that, it's so wide-reaching that it has been homaged in video game as well.
I think this one's the more homaged one.
Yes,
I think.
A lot of the references to Terminator, just as a franchise. So the first time that I watched the first film, I was like waiting for certain bits that happen in the second.
Yeah.
And you're sort of expecting them to do something or say something. So when they then do it in the first one, you're like, oh, good, they did it in this one. But yeah, this film has just such an influence.
Yes,
and people love it so much, rightly so.
Oh, absolutely. And to speak about how much they love it, critics scored 91%.
Yeah,
I think Rotten Tomatoes was working at this point, or whatever they've used to gather.
Right.
Not Rotten Tomatoes, sorry, but the reviews were online.
They managed to aggregate reviews.
Some of them were from the time, so that's why it's not 100. Because I think if they did it right now, it would be closer. Like Terminator 1.
Yeah.
Audience 95%.
Yeah.
So yeah, liked more by audience.
We should say how it matches up to our scores.
You're exactly
so for me, I gave it, I think, 10s across the board.
Is it a 10?
I did. 10, 10? Yeah, it's a 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. It's 50 out of 50 for me. I think that maybe has happened in other places on this watch through. I don't know if that's going to happen again in many places. You're having to do a lot more maths. I hate maths. I definitely will later on.
I think mine's a 42.
I remember the 8 that you had.
Yeah.
4.
Oh no, I did. I think mine's a 42.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, I'll say it now.
Yeah. I hate maths. Yeah, because you're going to look really silly.
I think it's a 42.
Yeah.
Which is still high. It's still it's an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. That of a aggregate of me.
Yeah.
So I'm lower there than everyone. But as you say, if I watch the proper edition, and that's what we should say for must watch. Don't watch the Redux. It's also a different ending. That's the other thing.
Yes.
It's a different ending, which I won't say what it is, but different film.
I mean, you could if it doesn't.
But if I say what this ending
nobody's
is,
then
they're going to. Well, out of the 1,000 possible endings, I know it's not this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't watch that one.
No.
But yeah, it was pretty much universally acclaimed. The only thing I could have apart from that was that people preferred the first half as better than the second. Is the only consensus I could slightly see on the Rotten Tomatoes. But it wasn't like this is good, this is bad.
Yeah.
It was just the first half was immaculate. And the second half was really, really good. Yeah,
for me, I think that just speaks to audience attention span.
Trivia. This is quite a long bullet point. Let me just read it first. Edward Furlong, the child actor.
Yeah.
So he grew, as we all do, over production.
Yeah. So how long was production?
It was a while. I don't have the actual time, but it was months and months. It was maybe 6 months.
And
the first one was maybe one.
Yeah.
Of filming.
But for a film like this, longer production.
Yeah.
He's 13,
exactly.
So puberty.
Yeah.
He might just have a growth spurt.
So exactly that.
Right when they're filming it.
Precisely.
It's like people say, "Wow, you really shot up over summer." It's like it might have been that they filmed that summer where he had his growth spurt.
And they did.
Right.
So and also the gaps between sequences because they're in different locations and things like that. I think it's when they're in the desert.
And they're trying to shoot sequentially.
They're shooting. So they didn't shoot sequentially. Obviously.
Because most films don't.
And he was in a hole for one of the later scenes because he they shot one side or whatever, and he was 5'1". I don't know. And then they came back and he's 5'7" or something.
Yeah.
So they had to dig a 6-inch little hole and put him in it.
Yeah. They didn't put him on a box like they do with Tom Cruise.
Well, they went back in time and put him on a box.
No, I just meant the other person in the scene. Because I'm assuming that they were doing it for scale. They weren't just filming. It's just him in the desert, but you can only see him from his shins.
That's how they should film kids. They should start a kid on what they think they might grow to by the end of production, and then slowly lower the box.
Just take away the boxes like the Twits, where they're taking a bit off the chair just to drive them insane. They're doing that, but with boxes.
Yes. They did that for that film. The other part that changed
was his voice.
His voice.
Right, his voice broke.
His voice broke. So
he was having to put
on a higher voice.
No. They adjusted it in post. So his voice is adjusted in post production and sometimes just redubbed.
Right.
So there are a few scenes. I think some of the desert scenes are his original voice, but most of the other ones they've altered the pitch higher, or they've just got him to do it again. Like fresh in ADR,
say
they could edit it better.
Could you do a higher pitch for this, please? So
a lot of it doesn't look like it. I had no idea until seeing afterwards.
No,
it's not.
I couldn't tell at all.
It's obviously synced perfectly.
Yeah,
as are our microphones. So it's obviously synced perfectly, but they've obviously edited it higher. Yeah, consistently across the film, which is interesting.
That is really interesting. I don't want to step on your toes, Mr. Trivia, but there are bits, and the thing is, some of these trivia things are just more well known because the film is big and because this film is so big. So one of the bits that I know, because I've come across it, is that there's a bit where Robert Patrick's character is sort of chasing the camera, and they had to. So he was doing sprint training, and he got so in shape that they had. So the camera's on the back of a truck that they're driving away, pointing at him, and he just kept catching it. Because he would sprint so quickly, because he was doing resistance training, sprint training. He just got so fit and so quick that they would call action. A truck would be driving 20 miles an hour and he would just catch up with it.
Yeah, so I've got very similar facts actually.
Which is incredible.
Which I didn't actually know that one.
Yeah.
But is that he learnt to breathe through his nostrils when sprinting.
Yeah.
So that it would look more threatening.
Yes.
And it does.
It does.
And it does. I'll go to some random other people injury sort of facts.
Yeah.
Arnie almost broke his fingers twirling around a shotgun.
Right.
Just sort of in between takes. Just sort of
not in the gym because just brilliant.
Nearly broke his fingers.
But were his eyebrows insured?
Linda Hamilton learned how to pick a lock, so she's actually picking a lock in the scene where she picks a lock.
Oh right.
It's at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, right,
So
she all right, and she learned how to do it.
Yeah.
Cool. They didn't do movie magic.
No.
She just actually picked a lock.
Exactly.
That's cool.
So that's a positive Linda Hamilton fact. Here's a negative Linda Hamilton fact.
Yeah.
In one of the scenes where she's being beaten up by the hospital people, the actor didn't beat her up for real or held back in a way. And somehow how the film was being done, it was really painful for her to pretend to be hit in a certain way. And she was telling him you just kick me in the stomach, do whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't. They were like, I'm not going to kick you.
Yeah.
So then in a scene later where she beats that person up, she actually punches him or whatever in the head.
Yeah.
For real. Which doesn't feel like it should pass health and safety sort of standards.
I'm assuming that she didn't ask permission for that.
No. So that's an unpleasant fact. Here's a funnier fact.
Yeah, I thought these were going to be fun facts.
That's just a fact. It's Mr. Trivia.
Yeah.
Not
serious. He takes
trivial.
no prisoners.
It's just Linda Hamilton again, but it's not about her. This is just her reporting it. She had to spend a lot of this film sat in a car with Arnie and Edward Furlong, the child, and she said that they would just speak about sort of girls to one another,
right?
And said that they got on really well, and the reason they got on really well is because they shared the same emotional age. 40-year-old Arnie and
13-year-old Edward Furlong. Yeah. That's brilliant. I think coming away from this film, this is a high point.
It does not, I don't think, reach the same point.
It does for me later on. Also,
immediately?
Not immediately. I mean, we want people to keep watching the video. We don't want to say, but there is, with each film coming up, there are reasons that are worth watching them or not worth watching them. And I would say that broadly as a saga, it still works as a saga. It's not there should only have ever been 2 movies. It's ridiculous that there's more.
Yeah.
Whereas there are some sagas that feel very much like that.
Yes.
That there's one original and then the rest are terrible, or there's two originals and then the rest are terrible. I don't feel like that is the case. There's varying degrees of quality as we move on.
That there are.
Let's move on to our next film, Terminator 3. You're in New York City.
No, I don't want any more films about the Terminator.
I'm never sick of pizza.
This is a visible Vin Diesel.
Yes, the scene with the lady's breasts getting bigger was very good.
Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and comment down below which sagas you want to see us watch next. We've been the Movie Marathon Men, and we'll see you next time with Terminator 3.